ANZ's $4.9 billion acquisition of Suncorp will be subject to immediate scrutiny from the Queensland Government and the Australian Competition Watchdog before it can move forward. Joining me live now, Scott Phillips. He is, of course, the Chief Investment Officer at the Motley. Scott, good morning to you. So what kind of... welcome back, by the way. Hope you had a good break. What kind of conditions are ANZ facing?
Mate, I had a great break, thank you, Pete. Fantastic road trip through Western New South Wales, Southwest and Central Queensland, but back refreshed and back to a $5 billion deal, as you say. 3 layers of concerns or maybe questions to be answered by ANZ. The first is the Queensland Government. Now, they have in their legislation rules, for example, that Suncorp's head office must remain in Brisbane. So we'll see whether or how that might change. Then, of course, there is the ACCC, the competition regulator. The big 4 banks, depending on what numbers you use, control somewhere between 3/4 and about 85% of the banking industry. So questions about whether or not a purchase of Suncorp would reduce competition. That's the big one. And then, of course, Treasurer Chalmers also has to sign this one off. So 3 pretty big hurdles. Now, ANZ have promised to keep the Suncorp brand alive for at least 5 years. And they're saying no job losses or branch closures for at least 3. Whether that's enough to sweeten the deal for the Queensland Government remains to be seen. They've also said they will fund or provide funding for Olympics and also for energy transition. So that might be enough to persuade the Queensland Government, but a lot of hurdles to get through here. An open question, frankly, whether or not the Australian banking sector needs this second tier. Think about Suncorp, think about Bendigo and Adelaide Bank, even MyState out of Tasmania. These are kind of the only remaining kind of tier 2 banks of any size. Then below that, you get to the credit unions and some of the member-owned banks, that kind of stuff. So a lot of questions to be answered by the regulator and the Treasurer as to whether or not this should go through.
OK, well, like the Treasurer, I come from Brisbane, where Lang Park, the once called Lang Park, was my church as a youngster. Scott's now called Suncorp Stadium, of course. What happens to the naming of Suncorp Stadium? Does it stay that, or will it have to change?
Yeah, it does for the time being. Look, frankly, as a New South Welshman, Carl, I hope it burns. No, I'm kidding. Look, it's out of origin. Next year is our year. It's a good question. And the Suncorp brand, really, they're saying, look, only might be guaranteed for as little as 5 years. I think you'd be a very brave person to imagine that goes away anytime soon. Maybe like St George and Bank SA, Bank of Melbourne, that are all owned by Westpac these days. Maybe they keep those second brands. Maybe Suncorp has a role as some sort of second brand, maybe a price fighter brand or something else. But there's a really open question about whether or not ANZ even wants to keep Suncorp. They're getting, as part of this deal, $50 billion with a B worth of both deposits and loans. So this bulks them up at a time when the banks are finding it really, really hard to grow. There's no organic growth right now. So what do you do if you can't grow organically? You buy some growth, and that's often behind these sort of deals. I'm pretty sure that's behind ANZ's deal this time around.
OK, well, back to the Treasurer. He has admitted that real wages will keep on going backwards due to inflation. You know, as you and all of us know, as part of his election push, that under the former government, everything was going up except wages. Do you think that they didn't quite grasp the magnitude of the problem a few months ago?
And it's a good question, isn't it? And this is one of these election things of, you know, what do you say and who do you say it to? How do you get elected? I've got to say, I think this was probably a good election to lose from the LNP. Of course, they'd rather stay in power, but the reality is economic times are going to be really, really tough for the next 12 or 18 months. No one was surprised that wages are not going to go up as fast as prices. As you say, Treasurer Chalmers is going to have to say this week, look, this is going to get worse before it gets better. Inflation forecast now somewhere between 6 and 7.1% are the range of forecasts for the full year. No one's getting a 7% wage rise these days, so we're all going backwards. Whether or not it can be brought back under control. Good news, by the way, the petrol price is falling at the pump. So that is a start, not enough and not quickly enough, but it's a start. Maybe it'll do the job. But as you say, a lot of political pressure and big political and economic challenges for the current government.
Yeah, no, driving to work this morning, I noticed that E10 dropped below $2. It's the first time I'd seen that for a while. So
$1.84 in some places.
Well, $1.84, there you go. That is good news there for motorists too, and will probably ease concerns around the question of the fuel excise tax. It's going to be returned to what it was in a couple of months' time. Let's just close here on housing prices, Scott. Downturn continuing to gather pace.
Yeah, it'd be nice to have some good news. I can't bring you any this morning, Pete. It's a real challenge. Look, I think, we've heard numbers from CoreLogic saying Sydney prices are now falling 3% in the last 3 months. That is a doubling of the pace of decline. And 42% of houses have actually fallen in value in Sydney. Around the rest of the country, Melbourne, up to 80% of houses have lost value. Now, other capital cities, not so significant. It's been a bit all over the place, ups and downs in different places. But for the first time, we're seeing falls, I think, in every single one, or maybe there's one other. There's still still in growth, but almost every other capital city around the country. Brisbane now falling, Adelaide now falling as well. No surprise, rates are going up. They're going to keep going up. We know that. But it really does add pressure to the economy. Now, good news if you're looking to buy a home, maybe this is a great time to get into your first home. So you take that and maybe run with that. But if you own a home, and broadly for the so-called wealth effect, the fact that if prices go up, we feel richer, we're more likely to spend. It is a real economic storm for the current government, but also for the RBA and other policymakers to try and navigate through. How do you keep the economy growing, make housing more affordable, keep inflation under control? They're the big three issues that are going to face the government.
Okay, Scott Phillips, welcome back again. Great start. Talk to you soon.
Thanks, Pete.